Thank you, and welcome everyone to the point 20-minute fast-paced session all about data. Data is the new oil. So let me introduce myself. My name is Jackie Palmer. I am the VP of Product Marketing here at Demandbase. I'm joined today by Mathew, VP of Go-to-Market for our Data Cloud, originally from DemandMatrix, and also by Adam Perry, VP of Customer Experience, originally from InsideView. Why don't you two say hi?
Hey, hey.
Hi.
All right, we've got a great session planned for you today. What we want to talk about is why do all this work around data? What is so important about data? Why is data the new oil? And why do we all need to take the time to build that data foundation and support our ABX strategy? What is so important about getting it done before we even dive into ABX? And why does data sort of make everything hum? Data basically fuels the experiences that we have for both the prospect or customer and the company from both sides. It really helps power that single pane of glass that connects marketing and sales and all the way out to the customer or prospect. So the first step in our 4-step process of connecting data for your account foundation is to connect the data that you have for all your accounts. This is obviously a critical step, but can be potentially prone to errors. So I want to talk about some of the best practices that Asher and Adam have seen around connecting the different data sets and different data points for their accounts. Adam, let's start with you. What are some of the best practices you've seen for the connect step?
Yeah, Jackie, the number one thing I see, and it happens over and over again, is people get lost in the data. So there's a lot of data out there. We're talking about selecting accounts for an account-based campaign, right? You have to remain focused on the data that you need to make that account selection, and don't get lost with all the other data elements that might be out there. It's too easy to get sidetracked. I'm sure you both have seen it time and time again. Remember that the data exists to serve the business process, not the other way around.
That's a great point. And I really like how it serves the business process, because that also speaks to ultimately the end customer's experience, because that again is our true goal with account-based experience. Asher, anything to add that you want to talk about in terms of the connect step and connecting all the data together?
Yeah, one of the things that I've experienced customers do is not think about what problems they want to solve and what the end user of the data's experience is going to be before they start all these connections. And what happens is you get into data overload, where you've connected a lot of different sources and a lot of different types of data together, and then you're in data no decision land, where you have lots of data, but you don't know what you're going to do with it.
We call that ready, fire, aim.
Explain
Fantastic.
that one, Adam. What does that mean, ready, fire, aim?
Yeah, so what Asher's really talking about is analysis paralysis. They dump a lot of data into a business process, and then they can't make a decision, right, about what to do. So then they just fire anyway, right? Like they just say, okay, well, we're going to take this big data monster that we created and just with the end goal in mind, push out a bunch of stuff. And that's how you do things like end up sending a bunch of cupcakes to people who are diabetic, right? Because you didn't think about the end customer experience. You just brought on a lot of data and had this cool idea and then executed.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about some of the data that we can gather, because the next step is the match step, where we actually take some of that behavioral data and match it up to the right account. And Asher, you have with your background from DemandMatrix, have this huge set of technographics, which is one portion of behavioral data. So maybe we can talk about that behavioral data and how technographic can play a role in this step and beyond. But maybe what you can do first is define what are some of the other kinds of behavioral data that you might see out there.
Thanks so much for this one. And I'm excited to share this because I spent about 1.5 years working with all types of companies and all types of data teams coming to this insight. And there's a bunch that's written by analysts, and it's all true because I validated by myself. If you look inside of your business, you have a data stack. And it's no different than your sales tech stack or your marketing tech stack. It's just different types of data that we all have to work with to serve one goal, which is how do we better serve our customers? And the way you do that is you figure out each portion of the stack and how it relates to each other, which is what we were talking about a little bit about in the previous question. And so the four pieces of the stack are firmographic data, which is all about the account. There's demographic data, which is all about the contact. There is technographic data, which is all about the technology consumption of an account. And there's intent data, which is all about the content consumption or search derived data. And so now you've got this data stack framework, and you have to be you have a framework or an idea of like how these pieces come together. And then what do they do to say? And so while the first two pieces, which is firmographic and demographic data, tell you about the description of a company and the people in it, the technographic data and the intent data actually tell you about the behavior of those companies. And so as we all strive to serve customers better by adding more value to executives' time that we ask of them, we really need to look at all the different types of data that help us build our sales hypothesis or better plan our marketing campaigns or review the NPS scores and the behaviors of our customers, or to take it even one step further, figure out a partnership strategy. And all of those things that make our go-to-market stem from this data stack. Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, Asher. One of the things that's super important here is to find a data partner, not a data vendor. So Asher just went through all types of data, right? Behavioral, firmographic, technographic. For a lot of our end users, listen again, they're just trying to solve a business problem. They don't know some of these terms from Adam, so to speak. And so if you can find a data partner to help you understand what types of data that are available, and again, tie it back to the business process, it's going to have a massive impact on the outcome of your account-based campaign, right? It's going to make that ABX much more successful. But again, it's important to partner there, not just have someone who throws the data over the fence and you're left to sort of interpret what you're looking at.
And right before the next part, Adam, what does it mean to actually partner with the data company? Like, why is it so important?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Asher. For me, it means a couple of things. A lot of data vendors will serve you up a data file and they want to put their best numbers first, right? We have the most data, it's the highest quality data. A good vendor will actually double click into that and say, hey, I'm looking at the data you have now and I see some weird stuff. For example, you say you sell into mid-market accounts, but for the data sample you sent us, I see a lot of small accounts. Did you send us the wrong sample? A partner will dig in and try and understand the problem you're trying to solve. A data vendor will overwhelm you and surface up just a bunch of data and sort of leave you to figure it out. And in particular, for when it comes to behavioral and technographics, there's so many interesting questions that are now possible to ask that weren't possible just 10 years ago. You really need someone who's got some experience there. The customers are experts on their business. The vendors are experts on data. That's why you come to a company like Demandbase, because we bring some, a pretty powerful mindset of folks who've been thinking about this for a long time.
I think that's a really great, actually, good segue to the third step in our 4-step process, which is around segmentation and some of the ways you can actually use that behavioral data that you've matched and gathered together, and sort of use it to build audiences, to help campaigns, and to further your ABX experience throughout the different channels that you're working with. Maybe Asher, since Adam set you up so nicely to talk about technographics and how that plays a role in connecting out to the different channels and some of the leveraging some of the behavioral data for your ABX experiences on those channels. Maybe you can start by talking about some of those ways that you can build audiences and build campaigns around some of that behavioral data.
It's fantastic, and thanks for setting me up, Adam. The thing about technographic data,
you're a good team.
100%. We're already working so well together. The thing about technographic data is, at least in my humble opinion, it's one of the most misunderstood data types in the marketplace, because as the evolution of B2B go-to-market data was taking place, and we went from firmographic to demographic data, and then for some odd reason, it seems like we jumped categories and we jumped straight to intent because of the promise that intent data provided to all of us. And in the middle, you were left with a category called technographic data, but everybody that talks about it just thinks about the install base of an account or a company, or the technology profile of an account or a company. And when you look at this entire data set, you'll see that there's a lot of other signals that you can grab from technographic data that can help you better sell or better market. And
give us an example, Asher.
I knew you were going to ask me the question. And so one of the things that if you think about how you're going to spend time with an executive, right, and you're going to look at who you are competing against and who are you complementing in their tech stack, or who are you going to partner with to earn that customer's business, you're going to want to know all the products that exist in an account. But then after that, that executive is going to think, oh, great, so thanks for sharing this with me. Now I have to figure out budget dollars and headcount who's going to serve me with, who's going to help me with this project and get it live. Well, you as a seller or as a marketer can get access to the technology skill set in an account, because we do have skill sets as a data type that is also part of the technographic data category that you can use to identify whether the human resources needed to take your product or your project live exist, or do they have to be recruited for. That would be one way. Adam, I'm sure you have another example.
Yeah, there's a dozen of examples come to mind. One of the things that we think about is consider your typical enterprise company. They may own multiple CRMs, right? So you get served up technographic data. The beautiful thing about the technographic data that comes from Demandbase is that it actually will tell you, okay, sure, they own 3 or 4 CRMs. This is the CRM they're really using, right? And that the difference in helping folks understand that piece of it can be a big part in the way you sell and market to that company. So again, bad data vendor will say, you know, here's your technographic profile. Look at all the cool technologies this company is using. Good data vendor says, hey, we took a closer look here. Here's what we really found, right? Here's what the people are using. Here's a skill set that they have. Here's what they're doing. And that allows me to sell and market to that company in a way that was not possible.
I do want to go back a little bit to, because I know technographics is primarily oriented towards the high-tech software technology sort of companies out there. But what are some of the other, maybe Adam, you know, you've seen it in other industries. What are some of the other behavioral data or other ways to use technographics for non-tech industries?
Yeah, sure. There's outside, I could answer this in 2 ways. One of which we could talk about how technology is impacting like a company like John Deere, right? Or an agricultural company. Or we could talk about all the data elements that are available, even outside of technographic data, that people don't necessarily think of as they're constructing a profile of who to market to, who's next on their bench. Let me just give you a super simple example of like a firmographic element that sometimes people don't think about. We all know that at the end of folks' fiscal year, whether that's calendar year, or they have a different fiscal calendar, there's some budgets left over to spend down to zero. If you don't spend them down, Jackie, what happens?
You lose them.
You lose them, right. So imagine if there was a way to understand when a company is coming to the end of their fiscal year as a way to help you with the forecasting, and maybe feed that into a set of accounts for an account-based campaign that is literally based on the customer spending cycle, right? Rather than other factors, right? That's a way to use a data element to help land business that aligns very naturally with the way customers like to spend money.
Fabulous, fabulous. All right, good. Let's move on to the last step in our process, which is the maintain step. So now that you've got your data matched, your accounts matched, connected together and segmented, what happens then? How do you maintain all this? How do you keep this clean and sort of protect against it in the future?
data, it's not just a one-time thing, right? We don't do account-based anything just once, right? It goes on the next quarter, the next year. You need your next set of accounts. So if we agree that this is not going to be a one-time thing that we're going to try, this is a go-forward way that companies go to market, well, we're going to need refreshed and updated, cleaned and enriched data on an ongoing basis. I see a bunch of things here. There's really two things I want to touch on. The first thing is where a lot of us are talking about sales and marketing data for things like driving an ABX campaign. That yells CRM super loud at me. Now, look, there's marketing automation, there's ERP, there's a lot of other systems. If you had to pick somewhere to start, the CRM is a good place to start to keep your data cleaned and updated and enriched on a regular cadence. Like if I had to pick one place to start, that's probably where I'd start. I think, the second piece is there's this old chestnut that it costs $1 to fix your data right as you're entering it in the CRM. It costs $10, right? If you didn't get it in right at the first time, just sort of regularly keep it clean and go back, and $100 if you wait until it breaks, right? What we're advising folks to do is just don't be that $100 person, right? We all aspire, right, to have a perfect data world where as the data's entered, we validate it and verify it, make sure it's coming in perfectly. The reality is business is probably messy. Just don't wait till a thing breaks, right? Because then you've got downstream business processes, and that's how you get a knock on the door from your local executive who says, hey, Adam, hey, Jackie, hey, Asher, what happened here? And we don't want to be that person. We want to be in front of it. And it saves the business a lot of money, millions of dollars.
That's awesome. That's really great. Asher, anything to add? Last thoughts on sort of the 4 steps?
Yeah, I would just like to add that there aren't many vendors out in the marketplace that have the breadth of the different types of data that we offer now with Demandbase. And it's not just the data, right? If there was custom data services that you needed, we've got those in-house as well. And the companies that came together in this transaction are all experts in their own data lane as well. And so the benefit that there is to all of you folks is that we can actually give you pre-integrated data. So you don't have to ingest the data, normalize it, connect it, all these things that you have to do. You can work with your Demandbase reps and we can figure out your data stack, the data attributes that are most meaningful to you, figure out the questions that you want to answer so that everything is connected. So that at the end of the day, when your senior executives asks you on what the ROI of this data, you'll have measurable results and amazing visuals that will all be talked about in our engagement with you to present to them, and hopefully you get promoted for it.
Fabulous. Thanks, Asher, for bringing us back together. So that was the talk we had for you today on building your account foundation, really sort of setting things up for the rest of the processes that take place in the ABX sort of ecosystem here. And I know that Shuli's got a great day planned for you for the rest of the day. So let's just wrap things up. This was the one about all the data.